Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Business. I'm your host, Jill Thomas, and this show is about helping business owners create success faster and more easily than they thought possible. This week's guest is Jackie Hanzl, and she's a speech pathologist, a freelance copy editor, a YouTuber, a podcast producer, and co-host. And she is learning how to follow her joy, do things with love, fill her heart up with love, and hopefully fill others' hearts too. So that is the most perfect intro I think I've ever received. And also, I absolutely love the fact that you have a job and not just one business, but you got two businesses. And that makes me so happy because I really feel like people need to have more chairs or more rungs on the chair, keeping their finances kind of flowing with multiple streams of income. So tell us how that sort of took place. What came first? What's the flow? Tell me about that.
Sure. The speech pathologist came first, although I have not been doing that since college. After college, if you want me to go into that, I majored in Spanish and minored in French and wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew eventually I'd go to grad school for something. I didn't want to be a teacher at the time, and now I work in a school, so it's kind of funny. And I really wanted to live in New York City. I live in upstate New York, and I grew up in upstate New York. And
You can hardly tell with that accent or anything. Yes, hardly tell.
I can't even tell.
That's right. You can't hear it.
No, of course not.
I'm the one
Yeah.
with the accent, not you. Yeah, go ahead.
That's right. So that was my main goal, and I found a job in the city, and it was in headhunting, and I hated it. I loved the people I worked with. It was all young people right out of college, and it got me to the city. So then I got a job at Morgan Stanley in Times Square, first as an assistant in the investment banking division, the real estate investment banking division. Long story short, I ended up getting a job in human resources, and it was fun. And I did campus recruiting for investment banking. I got to travel. I organized events, went to different Ivy League schools. It was really great. And 9/11 happened, and it kind of hit me and a lot of people like, what am I doing with my life? And I knew, and I loved the job. And I think at the time I was 25, not that old, but I was like, I can't keep doing this job where well, I wasn't directly hiring people, but we were hiring bankers that were younger than me and making like triple times what I was making. I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to keep doing this. So I started to think about teaching and along those lines. And then I also had back a few years before that, prior, my sister studied to be an occupational therapist, and she was talking about her friend who was studying to be a speech pathologist. And I was like, wait a minute, what is that exactly? And I ended up like observing some speech pathologists and was kind of interested in that. So I ended up going to grad school at 29, which at the time I thought was so old. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be the adult in the room that like everybody wants to leave. And they're like, any more questions? I'll be like, me. So I hate to say that, but I always remembered the adults in college that were like asking so many questions. You're like, I just want to go. Anyway, so I moved back upstate to Saugerties, where I grew up, and I moved in with my parents and went up and commuted to St. Rose in Albany, which is an hour, back and forth. Anyway, so I became a speech pathologist, and at first I really wanted to work in a hospital and work with adults, and I loved the medical side of it. But there was only a part-time position, so I also had to do something else. So I did what's called early intervention and preschool, and I traveled to homes and preschools and did that. And as my first, what they call your clinical fellowship year went on, I realized I really loved the kids. The hospital it was depressing, as you might imagine. I mean, we would go in and we do what's called a swallow eval, and most times we're telling people you can't eat normal textured food anymore, you have to mush it up, and like the best part of their day was eating. So it got very sad. And you'd see repeat people coming back. They had a stroke, then they left, and they came back because they had another stroke. It wasn't, it just wasn't for me anymore. So anyway, I decided to work with the children full time, and this job popped up at a school district that I'm in now. And I didn't know if I wanted to work in a school just because of the stuff that comes with the school. But I did. And now I'm in the district for 15 years. And at first I started in the middle school, high school, and now I'm at an elementary school. Anyway, how I got to doing other things, really, I think it was really COVID what happened. When COVID happened, I still worked. We worked remotely. It was definitely really hard. I was exhausted. Like I would work 3 hours straight doing therapy online, and it felt like 6 hours. Like it was just very draining and trying to keep the kids' attention. I mean, I got used to it, but and it wasn't even that I was like, what else can I do? I didn't even think about that. But I started to listen to podcasts a lot. And then one podcast I listened to, actually, before the podcast thing, I started editing. I loved writing, and I tried to write a book years ago, and I took a writing class, but to be honest, I felt like the writing class beat me down a little. Like I would read what I wrote, and I felt like it just would get torn apart, not by the other people in the class. Not that they'd say it was bad, but I was like, wow, maybe this doesn't come, I hate to say, as easy to me as I thought it did. Maybe I'm really not as good as a writer as I thought, but I did always like to edit. Even in college, if my roommates, my suite mates had a paper due, I was like, I'll proofread it for you. I loved it. I loved proofreading and editing. So, basically, this is what's really funny is, so during COVID, like I said, started listening to podcasts. This couple that I followed on YouTube, they do yoga videos. You might have heard of Boho Beautiful. I don't know. There are a couple.
I think I have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. They traveled all over the world and made beautiful yoga videos. I mean, they did kind of what a lot of people dream about. They sold all their stuff. They had lived in, I think, Toronto. And anyway, I followed them, and they were doing a lot during COVID. Like they would do lives, and they would do live yoga videos, and really getting the community together. And they were on a lot of podcasts, and one of them was Awakenings with Michelle Mache. So that's how I found
her work. Big fan of her work. Yes.
And so I found her, and as soon as I listened to her, I was like, I love her. There's something so comforting about her voice. And, she does readings in the beginning, and then she has a guest, and she gives a lot of good information, and she's very down to earth. She's a psychic, for those of you who don't know, and a lot of stuff. She's a hypnotherapist, a counselor, I don't know, a lot of stuff. So anyway, I decided for my birthday, I think it was 2021, I was like, I'm going to get myself a reading with her. So I did a reading with her. And one of the first things she said to me, she's like, editing's your jam. What?
That's how she would word it too. She's very practical in the way she speaks. It's like, yeah, you got to do this and don't do that. And yes, I love that about her. So we're talking about Michelle Mache, by the way.
Yes. And so I was like, editing? And she's like, yeah, you have a talent for editing. I was like, that does not sound glamorous. I literally said to her, I'm like, that does not sound I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. She goes, did you go to school for it? I'm like, well, not really. Anyway, I was like, I do love it. And she's like, yeah, you're going to do editing and all this stuff. She ended up actually having me do editing for her. She needed help. She said she meditated on it, and I can't, not my name, but she said like she was asking for help, and there I was, I guess. And
no pressure.
So I would ask her advice. Jackie. Yeah, no pressure. It's divine.
You're the one.
You must do this. Yeah. I edited like course description for her, worked a lot on that for her. And we would do exchanges. She would do reading for me. I got to take courses. So it's been good. And so I would ask her too. I was like, should I have a website? She's like, yes, have a website. And so shortly, I think after I started doing that, I'm trying to remember how it started. A friend of mine who was in that writing class with me saw that I had started an editing business, if you want to call it, and she reached out to me and said, could you proofread my book? And obviously she was an editor too, freelance, or worked for different companies and stuff, and a writer, obviously. And I was like, okay. And that was kind of, I think, my first paying gig. And then Michelle hooked me up with someone she knew that wanted to write a book and was trying to get him moving on it. And so she referred me to him, and we're still working together. It's been like 2 years, but it's coming along. The book has changed. Originally, it was supposed to be a short children's book, but no, it's going to be like a series probably.
Love it. Absolutely
But
love it.
that's fine.
My
Yeah.
last guest was is it in the book publishing industry, and if you guys haven't seen that show, you'll need to check that one out. Manon
Mhm.
Wogan talks about how to make money doing that. So I love that you're helping other authors take their little baby and just polish it. Just wipe off the
Yeah.
little.
Yeah. I mean, it's with this one, it's a little more, I have a little more creative or creativity with it, because he really needed that like input. I mean, maybe he'd written before, but not really. And so I've noticed his writing has gotten even better as we've gone along, like more details. He'll a lot of times just put in like what happened and what they said, and then I'll like fill it in with body movements, faces, background, whatever. It's really, really fun. And then so that summer, or toward the end of the summer, this one podcast that I listened to is called The Upside with Callie and Jeff. Jeff Dollar is his name. Their last name is Dollar, and he was a big radio guy in Atlanta. And then he ended up, apparently you get fired a lot in radio when you move around.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah,
got fired.
I've had radio host guests before, or clients before. I hear about that a lot.
Yeah. So he decided he's like, well, they never said anything about starting a podcast. And he started a podcast, and they got a huge following, especially in Atlanta. They have a huge following. Anyway, I would listen to them, and he decided to do a podcast course. He's like, people ask me for advice all the time and how to start one. So anyway, I did his course, and he knew I was doing editing. Actually, I helped write the description of their podcast. That's a whole other story, but it was just kind of just happened. Like he mentioned it on the podcast, and I was like, well, I have a description for you. And I just kind of sent it to him, and he ended up using it. But so through his course, he actually referred me as someone who could help people with their podcast descriptions if they needed it. Also, like show notes and things like that. So out of that, I got a tiny bit of business, and nothing is ever huge, but I don't mind. I love doing it. And also it's giving me experience and and even that whole, I've never owned a business or dealt with people like that. So asking like what to charge and being confident with that is definitely one of the most like uncomfortable things for me. I was like, and you get that, I hate this term, but I don't know how to describe it, that imposter syndrome thing where you're
Totally.
like,
I don't hate that term. I think that's a real thing. And I love what you're describing, because it is the number one problem that when I worked with clients that stops people from doing a business, because there's two things that people get tripped over. They get tripped over the name, which by the way, should just always start with your own name. And then they get tripped on, how much do I charge, or how do I charge? How do I ask for money? This is one I get a lot, is how do I ask for money when Spirit gave me this psychic ability? How do I ask for money? God gave me that. I'm like, God gave you hands too,
Yeah.
It's okay to asking for money to build somebody's house.
Yeah.
So I love that you're sort of moving now into the YouTuber, and I love that you actually, I'm a producer and a co-host. Tell me about the podcast. Tell me about this. I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, I know it's a long story long. So that's kind of what led to, so with that course, what he, when I had actually communicated with him before I actually signed up for it. And I said, I love podcasts and I respect it, and I would love to do one because I love to talk. And I really love the whole power of the voice, that you can listen to something and be taken somewhere and be able to visualize it without looking at anything. I also like the convenience of it, where you can be cleaning, you can be doing other things, but still be listening. So anyway, I had said, I don't know what to do it about if I were to do a podcast. He's like, that's okay. You could still take the class, whatever. So during the class, he said, I was worried about what to do and what other people do. He goes, think about something you really love, like you love to talk about. And I was like, oh, I love, and I would text with my friend, not a ton of friends, but like a handful of them, about certain HBO shows. Like, oh, like going back and forth and like, did you see that? And da, 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 da. Like maybe they watched it before me and binged it, and then I was binging it. I was like, oh my gosh, like it was oh my gosh. It was this is why I got HBO, and I was refusing. I was like, I'm not going to get HBO. It's so expensive. I think it's something from when I was little. It was like,
I know, because it's not. I'm like, I know, I had the same
it's
thing. I was like,
not.
my parents were like, this is so expensive. And
I
then
know.
you realize it's only like $15 a month. And
I
that's for the
know.
premium of the premium. Like, wait a minute. That's like 2.5 lattes.
I know it's not that bad. And
Nothing.
I was like, I'm going to do the free trial and watch why can't I think, I keep thinking it's not called The Unforgiven. It was with Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. It was a limited
Shoot,
series
I can't think
based
of the
off a
name.
book.
Yeah. Somebody's
And
yelling it right now at their computer. Somebody is yelling, probably several people who know
I
what it
can't
is.
believe
It'll
The
come.
Undoing. The
There you
Undoing.
go.
Okay.
There it is.
So that's what got me to get HBO and watch that. I loved it. And anyway, so when he was talking about what do you love, and I was like, I love HBO shows and I love to talk about their limited series. And I was like, oh, I could do it on limited series because it's kind of like a book. Because there's a beginning, there's an end, and that's it. Like you would just review. I was like, I'm only going to do limited series. And that's not what happened. But
Well, that's like how many shows would that be, Jackie?
I know. I think I was trying to be like
Too niche-y.
yeah. And so I wasn't going to do it by myself because I really didn't think me talking about a show. So I have one of my, best friends at work. She's actually a psychologist, a school psychologist, and we work a lot together and we work very well together. We do the announcements at school and, we go back and forth and stuff. Some people absolutely love us. I'm sure some people get annoyed by us. But we've had like people who are there, like a parent's there or something. They're like, do you guys rehearse? So anyway, I said, hey, and she's a ham. She's not shy at all. So I said, do you want to do a podcast with me? She's like, okay. So, we took I think he always gave great advice. The sound on his podcast was always amazing. So I went by, his recommendation. I mean, I felt like I could not veer off anything he said because I knew nothing about any of this. So he walked you through the RSS feed, how to do that. Well, anyway, so yeah, so we started Homebodies Only, HBO. Now it's called Max, but that's okay.
Right. Probably happened just after you guys got that. Yep.
Yeah, a little while.
Yeah.
My husband came up with it because I was like, what can we do that's like HBO? And she and I were coming up with stuff that was crazy. And he just like, how about Homebodies Only? We're like, oh yeah. So we started that. It was October of 2021. And we did start with a limited series. We started with oh my gosh, what's Scenes from a Marriage.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Which was 4 episodes. And then I think while we were doing that one, it had already aired and everything. I was seeing previews for Sex Lives of College Girls. And I was like, what?
I said, geez, you went from some pretty
I
extreme
know. Oh, it's all over the
shows.
place. Well, I kept seeing the preview for it. And I was like, this looks like funny. And it's very, Scenes from a Marriage is very intense. So I think I sent my co-host Diana, her name is, I sent her the preview, the trailer, and I was like, we got to do this. It's a Mindy Kaling thing. I said, I don't know though if it's limited or not. And they weren't saying because I don't think they know either. I was like, if it has another season, whatever, so we did that one next. And that one we got quite a bit of downloads. Like that kind of spoiled us because I just expected it to always be like that. Like I was like, oh, cool. Like now we're not getting that many. So, but it really, it kind of took off. I don't know if there was no other podcast. They had a big following pretty quickly. Not that we really went viral or made money from it, but it got a lot of listens. So basically from there, if there was we only did like new shows. We've only done like shows that were new. We did The Staircase limited series.
That was really good, by the way.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen that one, you should watch that. It was really good.
Yeah. But I could name them all. But
I know. There's probably like 20. I could think HBO always does have some really good content, and I'm always like, wow, how come regular television can't have stuff like The Wire? I mean, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So then I don't know if you want me to get into and then I can stop. Myself so much. Basically what happened why I start. So I started to upload it was audio only. When we first started recording, we were only doing audio, and I started to upload them to YouTube. I don't remember. I think somehow she didn't tell me to, but somehow it was through Michelle Mache. I was helping her upload her podcast to YouTube. And I asked a friend who's much younger than me, more in the know of stuff. And I said, should I upload my episodes to YouTube? He goes, yeah. He said, YouTube is like basically a search engine. He's like, people just put it on.
Totally
I was
true.
like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I probably should do that. So I started to do that. And then we started to record with video. And I was like, oh, I can, just keep learning and learning and learning. And he helped me too with editing and GarageBand. I was so afraid. I did not know how to edit. I didn't know how to add music to the audio. I had no clue. And I was so scared of it. Like I was going to mess something up. And so our first episodes that we would record, like Scenes from a Marriage, I felt like I must have recorded like frozen because I was so worried if it got, something happened. My son walked in or somebody, made a noise. Anyway, so we started to interview some people, and I really liked to interview. And I was like, I really like this. So we put out a little ad asking if we wanted like entrepreneurs, local small business owners, artists, musicians, etc. in our area. I live in an area called Hudson Valley. I said, if you want to join us and recap an episode, it's an HBO show, very specific. So and I paid for an ad and everything, and I got a lot of messages, and I was like, wow, people were really interested, but a lot of the people either didn't have HBO or didn't watch the shows we were talking about. And I was like, So basically came up with an interview series of entrepreneurs, self-made people, basically, but we'd recap their favorite series from any platform. And my co-host for the other podcast was like, it's too much, it's just too much for me. So that's how I started that.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up something that, so here you are, you're creating this podcast, and you could have just made it just talking to entrepreneurs, which is kind of the focus of mine. But here you add an element of TV to it as well. So now you've got people interested in your show who are interested in what an entrepreneur's take on life is. And then also, hey, what did you think about that episode last night of Survivor, or whatever it is that they watched, right? I love how you've kind of gathered this and made it almost like the water cooler conversations that those of us who work from home kind of miss. Like I'm speaking for myself here, but that's the one thing. When I had a job, I could just be talking about stupid stuff with somebody at the water cooler, and I can see those conversations were kind of interesting to watch because I see other people talk about interesting stuff on TV, and I can see where there would be a niche in that people would watch that because they're interested in both things. Has that kind of been your experience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting with different people. I know I have different viewers, maybe for each one sometimes. Yeah, and are they coming for the show or are they coming for the person? I'm not always sure. I also
who cares, right? Who cares?
Yeah, no.
Who cares?
What I like about talking about a show is you really bond with the guest. You have, you're talking about the same thing. And it immediately breaks the ice. There's immediate relaxing because you're talking about something that they know about. Definitely no surprises, because a lot of people don't ask for the questions ahead of time, but so I like that too. There's a little bit of like a connection there if they're not someone that I was friends with, before the interview.
I love this idea too of the sort of shared human experience that somebody in Encinitas, California, and somebody in the Hudson Valley in New York has, because we watch it on TV, because we all can kind of relate to it. And I can see where having these conversations can show people how people think, right? Mm-hmm. Because the show that I love the most on HBO, that one scene that I love from The Wire where they use the F word over and over again, I'm sure that probably says something about my personality, that I think that's the best scene ever filmed on TV. And it'd be interesting to see. I mentioned if you're getting to know people by what they like,
they choose.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me when you're talking about, the speech pathology. I'm going to guess that the speech pathology business part of it, or job.
That's right.
You're doing a lot of interviewing when you're talking to kids, right? You're not calling it that, but I imagine that a lot of the skills that you learned talking to children, trying to get them to open up so that you can hear their voice is probably a big part of the skills that you're using to create this podcast. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And these are children, I work with children, some it's on articulation. It's they can't make their sounds. So I'm trying to help them make their sounds better. But a lot of them too, they have expressive language or receptive language disorders where they might, with the sentence structure, a little disjointed, or they what we call circumlocute, where they talk around a topic but they're not getting to it. It's like a word finding thing. So I'm really trying to listen to them and almost dissect and be like, oh, I know what you mean. So I mean that's much harder than talking to someone who obviously can express themselves. So definitely I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, and it is trying to also get them to open up and be comfortable and ask, to be honest, the right questions from them that's not demanding, or that I think will get them to open up in the way I want them to, or be able to explain to them, or they will understand what I'm asking. So yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. The only reason I compare is that I'm like, giving them a voice or letting them have a voice and express themselves. Sorry.
Well, I love what you're saying because, I'm always telling my passion is helping people create a side hustle. I would love to have people have a side hustle job in a business so that somebody else is paying for their health insurance, which is really, really nice. I'm just saying, it's really nice. But a lot of people are always kind of stuck on this. What could my side hustle be? And in your case, looking at the things that you're doing already, maybe you don't start a speech pathology business, right? But you're doing something where you're listening to the words, you're paying attention to sentence structure. This is your editing business. You're paying attention to how people say things. This is your interviewing business. It helps to kind of show people what then the side hustle really should be. It's honestly, it's just usually not that far afield from what they're actually already doing right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If it's so different, that's going to be hard. And with the editing too, I try to keep their voice, even if I want to change some things, but I want to try to make sure they come through. Like when you're helping a child to find the words, you don't want to talk for them. And that's very hard.
I can see that being a problem. I can imagine that. Yeah. I imagine you wanted the child to still have child vocabulary, right?
Yeah. And not assume what their answer is. That's hard too. And I mean, a big part of though, on the other end of that with children is you model for them. So they repeat it back. So they at least are getting, like, say question structure. A lot of times they'll reverse words, and they'll put the what at the end, or I am, they'll say it like a sentence. So you always model the correct structure. So you are kind of providing the voice for them. So that's what you get. There's like a fine line there. You want to keep it.
I can see that. And I can also imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong here, imagine, Jackie, that you're using a lot of your intuition, whether you call it that or not, in this process to kind of get a feel for, okay, what can I say to this child to get them to talk to me?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I don't usually have that much trouble. There is one student that's a little tricky, but we play a lot of games and they can see the games when they walk in. So I have prizes. I'm not, they get stickers and they earn a prize. I mean,
you're not above bribery, are you?
No. When I first started at the elementary level, I'm like, I'm not doing that. They're going to work as a group. And every time they do, they work well as a group, they're going to put, I had these like pebbles, they were glass pebbles in a jar. And when it fills to a certain point, then they can, whatever, I don't even remember. Well, that really was like the next year. I had the sticker.
I love when people are willing to be flexible, right? Because we go into the situation where it's going to look like this, it's going to have these many dots, it's going to have this, and this is what we're going to do, and that's it. And that's the kiss of death for business, right? When you go into it with this really solid, but in your case, you're like, yeah, it worked sometimes, and it didn't work other times. The stickers are better, and bribery's good. Because in life, you get bribery. If I do a really good job at a job, I get a bonus. How is that not a sticker?
Yeah.
It's a sticker I can buy something with.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It's funny too with working in the school. We get observed, and if you're being observed and your plan, if this fantastic plan you made and you have these gorgeous materials, whatever you're doing, and if the kid's like not getting it, you have to change your plan.
I
So if you
love it. I
stick
love that's
into it,
such a
yeah.
great lesson for business owners too. I mean, because pivoting, being able to pivot, being able to say, okay, well that didn't work.
Yeah.
That's what
No
my
matter what
business
the
coach told
research
me to
says.
do. Yeah. So what the research says, oh my goodness,
Oh,
totally. I love that. That's so
yeah.
true though, isn't it? Like this is what the textbook said, but in
Yeah.
reality, try to do it. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's go to your editing business because I know that's not a huge chunk of what you spend a lot of time with, but I can hear the passion in your voice when you're talking
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
What would you
Yeah.
tell somebody starting to get into the editing business? Because that's a side hustle that you can do in your own time, in your pajamas, in your living room, or
Yeah.
while you're watching an HBO show, right? Tell me what you would suggest to somebody who's considering getting into the editing business.
It was funny because I had somebody ask me that. I went into a local bookstore. I was talking to them about one of the books I worked on that was self-published back in April. And I was like, oh, this would be great if we could get it into local bookstores by me. So I went in there, and the person who I was talking to who worked there, he was like, how did you start doing it? And he's like, I really want to do that. And I was actually going to he was going to put an ad on, like, so I don't know if he said Craigslist or not, but something like that, and offer for free just to try
No.
it out. I know. And I
Let
was
me
like,
talk to him. No.
I was like,
No.
I said, to be honest, I said, I made an Instagram page, and then like my friend contacted me. It's been more through who I know. The person who self-published, Sames Greg Wineline, the book is called Been There, Taught That. And how I found him, or how he found me, is a funny story. Basically, oh my gosh, there's 2 summers ago, I get an email saying so and so, this friend of mine from many, many years ago, said recommended you to join. It's called, I think it's called Aligned, or something like
Oh
that. And
yes. Oh,
is
I've
that
gotten that
okay?
email. It's so annoying.
Yes. And it's
Don't send that to me, guys. Just letting you know. Hate
so I'm
that.
like, what is this? And it said it's for small business owners. And I'm like,
Huh. Okay.
how does he
I didn't
even,
get that one then.
I didn't even think my friend, I was like, how does he know anything that I'm doing editing? But again, maybe he saw my Instagram page. Like, I have no idea. And I'm like, what is this? And it was free. Although of course you can pay a premium, and I don't even know honestly if it still exists, because I have not
I hope
gotten
it
like
doesn't because it's
anything
so
from them.
annoying.
Yeah. So it's very odd to navigate too. It's like a banged up Facebook. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So
I'm
I
sure
went
that's
on
not in
there.
their brochure. This is a banged up Facebook. I love it. This is what an editor would say. It's really a banged up Facebook. Jackie, that's perfect.
So I went on, I created a profile, and not long after, and I think they said, like, who would you connect with? And I was like, I guess, obviously writers, authors, maybe other editors, whatever I did. Not too long after that, I think I got a message from this author, and he was asking me about my rates, and he doesn't live that far away. He lives up kind of in the Albany area, and he was like, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to shop around. I definitely want you, but I'm not going to probably have something for you. It was like for another month or something. Anyway, I was like, okay. um, and that's how I connected with him. Excuse me. I had asked him later on, I said, how did you find me? I mean, he's like, oh, I guess I was halfway through my Guinness. And then I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
Answer.
I think,
no, that's awesome.
I think because we had some connections. Like I work in a school, and he was a teacher, obviously, and he lived by St. Rose, and I went to St. Rose anyway. But so that's how I got connected with him. So I'm not, and so I think for people who want to get into this, I think just start creating the things, like create the Instagram page, if you build it, they will come. I mean, and Instagram's free. I did create a website, and I don't think I get, to be honest, a ton of hits from that. I'm also, wherever you put your energy, it does seem to come back. Like, I would post more on my Instagram page when I was posting more, just little blurbed, little like grammar tips, like things that are pet peeves of mine, like using the apostrophe S for plural. It drives me nuts. Anyway, like little things that were my, it's not nip it in the butt, it's nip it in the bud. Believe me, I've heard that one too many times.
I probably said it. I'm glad we talk long enough. You'll hear from me.
So anyway, then it seemed like that I would maybe hear from like my friend who I had done proofreading for, and she had me work on, her workbook. And so I do think that, I mean, just put it out there. Just put it out there. And don't be afraid. Like if someone, and then someone actually gets back to you and says, well, how much are you? Be ready, look it up or whatever, but have a price. I did start very low because I was like, I am new at this. So, and I really want the experience of it. So I did start lower. I mean, not that I'm going to go so high anymore, but you know what I'm saying? Like I did start on the lower end because I want the business and because I wanted the experience. And
well, and I love how you didn't do, you didn't start you say on the lower side, as long as you didn't do free, right? Free is no skin in the game. But yeah, we've all done that, had that experience where we charged less than we wanted to because we just needed the experience. We were getting something out of it. We needed the exposure.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is that being out there, doing things you're passionate about kind of gets you in front of people. I will say, to share a story from my own life, I used to do a lot of meetup hikes before the, zombie apocalypse happened. And every time I would go on these meetup hikes, I would get a new client. And I wasn't trying to. I'm a hypnotherapist and a psychic reader. I wasn't trying to, but just you're chatting with people and they ask you what you do. And then after a while, I realized I probably should bring some business cards. And I would say, if I can offer this advice to everyone, and it sounds like you're kind of saying that too, doing things that you care about puts you in a place of being around people who align to you. So I was hiking, I love to hike, and I would meet people who like to hike too. And there was some camaraderie and a sense of connection there. And it would always draw in some new clients. And I loved that. Would make money every time I go hiking. Can you believe it? And I was never trying to, trust me, you were not getting an elevator pitch for me when I go on a hike. It's not, I don't care. Right. I have enough business. I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give you, welcome to do business with me.
Yeah.
Is there any final bits of advice that you could say to somebody kind of in this position of, should have a job and a business, or how about a job and 4 businesses? And please don't make one of those businesses Uber, what would you say other than that?
I think for me, the reason I seek out these other areas is, it's the truth. I think that I'm not completely fulfilled with my full-time job. And I'm not saying I hate the job or anything like that. I love it, but I wanted to do other things that fill me up, and I wanted to be in control of them.
I love that. I love the idea of, I want to do more. I have other interests as well. And that's one of the great things about a side hustle, is that you get to nourish those other interests. And I love the opportunity with a business to, I say who, I say when, I say how much, not to quote Pretty Woman, although that was a great line. So I use that one a lot. It's a great line. But that's what's nice about having a business, right? I can decide if somebody's not a good fit. Whereas when I had a job, a customer come in I didn't like, that was my customer. It didn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I also just thought of something else. Also, it's never too late to try. I mean, I know I'm not that old, but I am 48, and like, most teachers, they're getting a little closer to retirement age, but I started kind of late, so I'm not that close. But, and at first I did feel silly. I was like, oh, put things on YouTube. Like, I'm not a YouTuber, like a 15-year-old or whatever. But like, who cares? If it makes me so happy when I hit publish to that, when I click on that and I feel like I'm birthing something. I'm like, look what I did. I always thought, I'm like, I'm not a creative person in terms of like, I don't make art. I always thought of that, and like, drawing and stuff. But I feel like these videos or these podcasts, I feel like I made something.
I love
or even
that.
The editing, obviously, too. When I edit
I love that. I wish I was more like you, because I hit the publish button and I have like a panic, like, oh my God, I did get the F word out of that video, didn't I? This is the version that doesn't have the F word, right?
Oh, I know. It's happening.
I'm like, just check it. I'll just check it like 8 more times.
Well, that's why too, like I always try to publish or get it in there a few days before it's actually gonna.
Totally. Then I can make sure 75
Yes.
times.
Yes.
No ads, and I got rid of the F word because YouTube did not like the F word. So,
No.
Jackie, you're awesome. I really appreciate you being on the show. And
thank
you so much for
This is
participating.
so much fun.
It is fun. It's fun when people.
Thank you for having me when I feel like I was like, I'm not a sole business owner. So thank you so much.
I'm meaning it really. No, I'm just kidding. I'm faking it. It's part of the imposter syndrome. We all have it.
There you go.
So I'm just going to close with, it's the age of the entrepreneur. Get out there, make it happen. But most importantly, do what Jackie said. Have fun doing it. Do things that you enjoy. Do things that make you happy, even if initially you're not getting your full exchange. And
actually things that scare you a little too.
Ah, there you go. Things that scare you a little bit, like the button on YouTube.
Like that button. Yeah. And editing.
Oh my God.
And recording when you're not sure if you know how to edit.
And mic problems. I have 2 bad mics sitting on my desk that you guys can't see because they're not working. Awesome, Jackie. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Goodbye, everyone. See you next time and stay tuned. Okay, bye.
Bye.